As the 2025 season progresses, the inequality of the league is on full display. While you have many competitive and exciting teams, there's just as many worthless franchises that give their fans nothing to cheer for. We're only 2 months into the season, and there have already been 3 managers fired for their team's poor performance, just shuffling deck chairs hoping things will change. Nothing's gonna change though as long as these teams keep being built terribly. The AL East is proving to be less of a dogfight and more of a collection of disappointments. The lone exception to this is the Yankees, who look like their usual selves. Aaron Judge is hitting at an absurd pace right now, and if he keeps this up, he'll win the MVP in a landslide. They're still the team to beat, especially as their bullpen continues to find their footing. The Blue Jays are still holding their own in the middle of the division. While they ended April with some truly pathetic losses, they've regained some form throughout May. Bo Bichette and Vlad Jr. are both fully back on track, hitting nearly 300 after a slow start. Unfortunately, their rotation is already thin and it isn't getting much better. Their offense has a high enough ceiling though that they could go on a run in this weak division. The Rays still look like a very average squad, just going with the ebbs and flows of their schedule. Things looked shaky at the beginning of the month, but they rattled off a nice 6 game winning streak around Memorial Day to keep treading water. At this point, that's all you've really got to do in the AL East to have a chance. The Red Sox are sitting right at 500, but it's masking some glaring flaws in the organization. Tristan Casas was having a rough start to the season, and now that he's injured, the team somehow doesn't have a real replacement at first base. They asked Rafael Devers to fill in, but he's been refusing to since he was already moved out of his natural position at third base. That's just one example of the dysfunction going on around this team. As long as they can't keep getting out of their own way, they're going to keep sitting below 500. The Orioles aren't just disappointing, they're downright terrible. Their pitching is in a constant state of meltdown, putting games out of reach for their young core on a regular basis. It's a travesty to watch this team this year. All of the goodwill built in the last several seasons has been completely burned. Orioles management decided that the problem wasn't their own horrible roster construction, but manager Brandon Hyde, and subsequently fired him in the middle of the month. That'll solve the pitchers giving up 7 plus runs per game, having no game plan at all. It was nice to be back for a bit, but the Orioles are a laughing stock once again. The Central is quickly turning into the hottest division in baseball, pouncing on a weak league overall. The Tigers continue to be one of the hottest offenses in the league. Apparently, moving to center field was the jolt that Javier Baez needed, because he's hitting like it's 2018 again. They have the best record in the AL and are looking good doing it, just being a model of consistency. Don't look now, but the Twins have clawed back into relevance with a 13-game winning streak. They've been the hottest team in May, going on a 13-game winning streak. This is the beauty of baseball. A team can look completely dead in the water for 1 month and revive their season just as quickly. If they want to keep these good times up, though, their players gotta stop colliding with each other. It's like they want to perpetuate the team's curse. The Guardians are chugging along, just finding ways to win games, even if they look shaky. Emmanuel Clase is starting to gain his mojo back after a rough start, and that's exactly what the Guardians have been needing. Anytime they try to take the next step, though, their inconsistencies come right back to keep them down. They're on the right track, it's just not all clicking right now. The Royals got to tee off on the Orioles to start the month, hitting 7 homers in 1 game. They've been riding momentum ever since, finally looking like the team that can compete for the wild card. We already knew their rotation was great, but Chris Bubich is really taking that to the next level by hurling an ERA below 1.5 so far. Seems like things are finally clicking for the Royals, and they'll need it with how the division's turning out. The White Sox are still terrible, but no longer in an infamous way. Sure, they still lose games in hilarious fashion and mess up the fundamentals of baseball, but they're not on pace to be the worst team of all time this time around. That's an improvement on the South side. There's been a great deal of mediocrity in the AL West so far. The Mariners are at the top of the pile, as they're starting to play up to their potential more often. When things are clicking, they're one of the most fun teams to watch, especially when Big Dumper Cal Raleigh is having a season for the ages. Unfortunately, Logan Gilbert was sidelined with an injury at the end of April, and their already thin rotation is being tested. The margin for error is getting smaller with every passing day, and they can't afford to go back to being the same old Mariners. The Astros are quietly sneaking back up to the AL West lead, even if they don't look like the juggernauts of years past. Hunter Brown is pitching at a Cy Young pace right now, and they arguably have one of the best bullpens in baseball. As their offense comes back to life, the Astros should continue to trend upwards. The Rangers' offensive woes continue to weigh them down, to the point where they fired their offensive coordinator. Brett Boone was hired as a hitting coach, but he's got his work cut out for him. They're a bottom 3 offense in the league, batting 220 as a team. They're still mostly relying on their pitching talent, and they have 3 guys in the top 10 best ERA in baseball. Still, Marcus Simeon and especially Jock Peterson are hitting terribly to start the season. If that can't be fixed by a new hitting coach, I don't know what's going to fix it. The Angels spent May fluctuating somewhere between decent and mediocre. Zach Neto is having a superstar season, but apart from him, the bats have gone silent. Mike Trout missing most of the month with a knee injury doesn't exactly help either. It's not all bad though. They actually swept the Dodgers in Chavez Ravine, which nobody could have expected, not even themselves. There's an interesting team buried beneath all this mess, but the Angels can't get out of their own way for long enough for them to spread their wings. The A's look competent enough against fellow mediocre teams, but just completely crumble under any kind of real challenge. Ever since a May 13th win over the Dodgers, the A's have been completely bottoming out, losing 14 of their next 15 games, most of which weren't even close. That losing streak has pretty much killed any hope for their season, what little there was to begin with. Not much has changed in the NL East, and that's to be expected with the Mets and Phillies duking it out on top. The Phillies continued to boast the best rotation in the league, and it propelled them to the best record in May. They're a steady presence among the top wildcards, but have somehow been flying under the radar a bit. Things will start to get more difficult for them, though, as their star closer Jose Alvarado tested positive for PED usage. Both the team and Alvarado insist that it was a false positive set off by a weight loss drug, but regardless, this will make him ineligible for the postseason. It really is a fat blow for the Phillies' chances in October. The Mets are still the team to beat in the NL, even with their ups and downs during May. Pete Alonso is still murdering every baseball in sight and showing no signs of slowing down. Their rotation is also looking very comfortable, with Griffin Canning slotting in nicely and a healthy Kodai Senga showing us what he's made of. Barring some sort of collapse, the Mets are poised for a deep run. The Braves have officially pulled themselves out of the muck and are right back in the mix. Spencer Schwellenbach is exactly the kind of pitcher they needed to step up in the rotation, and so far so good. Most Braves games are competitive, usually turning into one-run games regardless of their competition. This will keep them in the wildcard hunt for the foreseeable future. The Nationals are one of the more entertaining teams, even if that doesn't translate to much success. They've had their share of ugly games, but that's to be expected from a team with no bullpen. There's not much to add here. What little hope there was for a good Marlins season has been washed away to sea. They're just giving up runs in bunches and don't have any firepower of their own to speak of. They're definitely more entertaining than they were last year, but don't let that fool you. They're still terrible. The NL Central is a very average division, with a pretty big race for second place. The Cubs still have one of the most explosive offenses in the league, even if their bullpen is still hot garbage. They possibly have the most complete lineup in baseball, filled with veterans and great young players. The breakout player this year is Pete Crow Armstrong, who originally just looked like a good fielder, but he is mashing the ball like crazy too. Overall, the Cubs got some good vibes this year. The Cardinals caught some fire at the beginning of the month, propelling them to a comfortable second place in the division. They have one of the best home records in the league, going 19-8 overall so far. Far from being a bad team, the Cardinals are knocking on the door for the division lead, and they could get there if the Cubs start to stumble. The Brewers are completely average on paper, but the reality is that they're two teams at the same time. One that can hang with the best in baseball, and one that gets blown out by the White Sox. While they're keeping pace in the standings, it's hard to see the Brewers as anything more than average with these random meltdown games they keep having. A lot of the same can be said for the Reds, who are fighting their own inconsistencies. One week their offense is completely silent, the next week they go on a winning streak and sweep a team with a better record than them. It's impossible to really analyze this team. They're truly the randomness of baseball personified. It wouldn't shock me if they had a 15-game winning or losing streak next month. The Pirates continue to make headlines for every reason other than baseball. A fan spat on one of their game day ushers, causing him to fight back once with his fists and again with a belt. There was no backup for the situation for over 10 minutes because this organization is a deliberately underfunded pit of garbage. On the field, the Pirates are somehow even more of a mess, losing their first 7 games to start May. This losing streak was enough to send manager Derek Shelton packing. Surprisingly, firing Shelton hasn't made this terrible roster play any better. They went an entire month without scoring more than 4 runs in a game. The only question is how much lower can they go, because it's looking like rock bottom so far. The NL West remains the toughest division in baseball, but it's cooled off a bit in the month of May. The Dodgers are still the team to beat, even with their usual pitching injuries mounting. Their ace Yoshinobu Yamamoto is healthy though, and he's pitching at a Cy Young pace right now. The emergence of Andy Pajes in center field has also taken some of the pressure off their superstars. Still, it's around that time of the year where the pitching injuries make the Dodgers look human for a month or two. The Padres are keeping right up with the Dodgers, thanks in large part to Fernando Tatis Jr. having an MVP caliber start. Apart from him, though, the Padres' offense has been incredibly cold. If the bats can't wake up a bit, the Padres are going to start falling behind. The Giants are proving that their hot start wasn't a fluke, but some flaws are starting to rear their ugly head. With Lamont Wade Jr.'s massive struggles at the plate, the team has a glaring hole at first base. Still, Willy Adames leads the league in RBI, and they're just overall running on good vibes right now. Baseball is a game of vibes after all. The Diamondbacks were dealt a tough hand this year, and they continue to make it more difficult on themselves with a bunch of meltdowns. All too often, they have to rely on Corbin Carroll being superhuman just to barely win a game. With both of their options at closer being injured, the D-backs have given up the most ninth-inning runs in the league. As long as the bullpen keeps being injured and underperforming, it's going to continue to be an increasingly uphill battle for the Diamondbacks. The Rockies are truly in a league of their own when it comes to playing putrid baseball this season. Their start to May was catastrophic, going on an 8-game losing streak that culminated in a 21-0 loss to the Padres. That loss was embarrassing enough for the team to finally fire Bud Black after 8 seasons. To say he was getting stale in Colorado would be an understatement. He was the long-expired cereal in the back of the pantry. After his firing, the Rockies officially set the record for the worst start in modern history at 7-36. They ended the month of May with 9 wins total, a thing that's never happened before in history. They're on pace to win 26 games this season. Surely they can't keep losing at that pace, right?
Wood lets it rip to center. Mullins back. Mullins at the wall. Tie game again. Oh, he is scary. He's the monster at the end of the horror film.